It's on to another producer who reworked it and eventually produced it into a West End hit. And not only was it a West End hit, which is still running, it performed all over the world. It had a run on off Broadway in New York and won awards there as well. It won Olivier Awards in Britain. So it started off in village halls in North Yorkshire and ended up being performed off Broadway and in the West End of London.
Let's go on to your next track.
I recently had my 60th birthday and I went to see the leader of this band in concert. But I first heard him when I was in my 20s, and it's a band called Talking Heads, an American band. And this is a track called The Big Country. Talking Heads are a kind of slightly punky, I suppose, in those days band, led by a man called David Byrne. And the big country that he's singing about is America, I suppose, viewed from the air. And I've visited America a few times. I have friends who live there, and I've liked my visits a lot. But I also knew that I never wanted to live there. And the chorus in The Big Country is, when he's looking down, he says how wonderful everything is, and then he says, I wouldn't live there if you paid me. And so when I like that song, because it kind of, it gives me that, yeah, America's fabulous, but give me England every time.
Okay, thanks, Nobby. So let's listen to Talking Heads and The Big Country.
Together on seclosounds.org.
The Big Country is track 11, side 2 of the second Talking Heads 1978 album, More Songs About Buildings and Food. The album's one single, a cover of the Al Green hit Take Me to the River, peaked at number 26 on the pop singles chart in 1979. I then went on to ask Nobby about how he met his wife Jill.
Well, I was fortunate, I suppose, when I moved to the northeast, like I mentioned earlier. It was a little, temporarily, a bit of a lonely time for me because I didn't know anybody and I was in this very different industrial community. And I was asked to go and do a radio commercial. I was invited because the local radio station was just round the corner from the arts centre I worked at, and the person who was producing that voiceover was a lady who was to become my wife, and that's where I met her for the first time. And I think you can, I've talked a lot about my career and the things I've done and what I've achieved and so on, but I think if you're lucky enough to have a partner who supports you in that kind of thing, it makes a huge difference. You see, the work that I was doing, a lot of the time, the theatre is not an incredibly well-paid job. And especially when you're working freelance, which I did for a lot of years, you get a bit of work here and a bit of work there. And it really is hard to make a living in the theatre. But when I got married, I was lucky enough to be able to share my life and the difficulties and the financial struggle with somebody. And actually, over the years, we've kind of taken it in turns. My wife Jill and I have taken it in turns to take risks. When I've had a bit of a paid job, she's taken a risk and done something that she wanted to do. When she had a regular, secure job, she's given me the freedom to take those risks that you've heard me talk about before, and go out and form a theatre company. And who knows whether that was going to work? We didn't know at the time.
I guess there are many wives who would have looked back in horror and said, "You're going to do what?"
Yes, yeah. And in fact, she gave me that kind of... it's wrong to say gave me permission, but she made it possible, I suppose. We were not blessed with children, unfortunately. We weren't. That was something that didn't happen for us. And I suppose, there's a downside to that, a terrible downside to it, but there's also a certain amount of freedom that comes from that. We didn't have the responsibility of little children to worry about, so we had a certain amount of freedom to take risks that perhaps a family that had children just couldn't have done. So I tried to see the positive side of it. I'm not saying I would have liked to have had children. We both would have liked to have had children, but that didn't work out for us. But there have been some compensations, I think it's still going on now. Here we are. We're 60 years old, and we're still kind of supporting each other in the different things that we do. So I think that I've been incredibly lucky in that respect to find somebody who would put up with the kind of lifestyle that's kind of a little bit insecure and uncertain.
Yeah, I know Jill was pivotal when you had some bad news 2 or 3 years ago when the Arts Council said they were going to remove the funding that was helping North Country Theatre, put all these wonderful productions together. I know that was a major shock, but at the time, yourself and Jill, it could have been the end of North Country, but you decided that North Country was just too good a thing to lose just because there's no funding for it. So,
well, we were. That there is a good story there, really, which is we did lose what's called our regular funding, and it was a shock. We couldn't understand it because we thought we'd done everything that we could do to fulfil the Arts Council's aims and objectives, but for whatever reason they cut the funding, the regular funding, and it was Jill really who rolled her sleeves up, metaphorically, and got stuck into fundraising for us. And we're a company now, North Country Theatre now, is much more dependent on a kind of crowdfunding thing. We set up a scheme called Be an Angel of the North Country, and we asked people to give us a donation or to be a subscriber. And we thought, if we can just get 400 or 500 people to give us a relatively small amount of money and to promise to do it for 2 or 3 years, that could replace the regular funding that we'd receive from the state. Right. And I'm pleased to say we've managed to do it. So we've kept the company going based on the support of hundreds of individuals rather than on a grant aid. So I'm quite proud of that, really. although, as you rightly say, a lot of the work involved in that has been done by my partner Jill, but I think it's partly because North Country was so popular that we were able to persuade people to put their money where their mouth was and support us.
Yeah, I mean, it was a fantastic achievement, and it means that now North Country carries on. And can we talk quickly about the things you're currently working on?
Yeah, I'm about to. Well, we've got a couple of things on. We're about to start a tour of another adaptation of a ripping yarn from the great Edwardian era, like the 39 Steps. This one's The Lost World by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Most people know Conan Doyle, of course, for Sherlock Holmes, but he also wrote a lot of other books, kind of early science fiction. And The Lost World is a fantastic story about a lost plateau in the middle of the Amazon jungle where dinosaurs have survived. So the big question is, how can that be done on stage? How can you have dinosaurs and pterodactyls and all that kind of stuff on stage? Well, the answer is you have to see the show to find out.
And people can see it this autumn, I guess. It's
yes, touring from from October through December and through into January. Unfortunately, it's mostly in the north of England, and your listeners probably may or may not get up there, but if they look on our website, they can find information for where they are. If you happen to be in the north of England, have a night out in a village hall and see The Lost World.
Okay, we'll put the details on the Plain Talking website. Time for your next song.
Well, I've been talking a bit about the importance of my partner, my wife, Jill, and this song, Perfect Imperfection, is a love song, really, and it's by an American band called Little Feat, who were always one of my favourites. I still think they're a great band. They don't exist anymore. Perfect Imperfection is about how love is a kind of double-edged sword, and I think if you've got a successful relationship, most people's successful relationships, you know there are times when love can be quite a pain as well as a blessing, and this song, Perfect Imperfection, is about that.
Okay, let's have a listen to Perfect Imperfection from Little Feat.
There's a girl standing on the corner, watching love walk right out the door. She thought that love was like a shiny diamond, blinded by the light. She did not see the flaw. Now she's lonely, standing there for hours, wishing he would change his mind. Caught in that paradox of feelings, wondering why the hurt when it used to feel so fine. Love is a perfect imperfection, sometimes a happy, sometimes sad. Whenever love comes your direction, don't you hide it away. Don't you hide, don't you hide. You know that there's no reason for you to be alone, just 'cause love tree is broke your happy home. How can you celebrate when all you feel is suffering heartache?
Bringing people and communities together on seclosounds.org.
Your listening station.
You are listening to Plain Talking with your host, Mick Bannister.